Welcome to Pressure News Network, when we'll take a look at updates from today's celebrity court proceedings.
Welcome to the deep dive. The Sean Diddy Combs trial, well, it's been dominating headlines, hasn't it?
It really has. Hard to ignore.
And today, we're really zooming in on something pretty crucial that happened Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. That was the testimony of his former assistant, Capricorn Clark.
Yeah, and her testimony is potentially huge. I mean, she was right there, close to Combs, close to Cassie Ventura, Kid Cudi, key people.
Exactly. Not just someone on the sidelines. She was, deep inside the operation. So our mission today is to unpack the biggest claims from her testimony.
Right. And figure out what it all might mean for the trial itself.
We want to give you, the listener, a really solid grasp of these developments. So let's start with Capricorn Clark herself. Who was she exactly in Combs' world?
Well, she started out as his assistant, worked for him for several years. So she saw the day-to-day, the business side, everything up close.
Okay.
And then she actually moved up, became the global brand director for Bad Boy Entertainment.
So a promotion that suggests, a fair bit of trust there, access.
Definitely. It puts her right in the inner circle.
Her name has popped up before in this case, right? Something involving Kid Cudi's testimony.
That's right, yeah. Kid Cudi testified earlier that Clark had actually warned him about Combs showing up at his place unexpectedly. So she's already kind of woven into this story.
Okay, interesting. And maybe most importantly, her relationship with Cassie Ventura. They were close.
Very close, by all accounts. And given Cassie is so central to the allegations against Combs, Clark's perspective on that relationship is potentially vital.
Yeah, you'd think she'd have known a lot about what was really going on there.
Precisely. It makes her an incredibly valuable witness for the prosecution, especially as they try to show this alleged pattern of behavior.
Okay, background established. Let's get into the testimony itself. One of the most, frankly, shocking parts was this alleged incident with Kid Cudi back in December 2011. What did Clark say happened?
So according to her testimony, this all blew up right after Combs apparently found out Cassie was involved with Kid Cudi. Clark said Combs showed up at her place in L.A. just absolutely raging. She used words like livid, furious, mad at me, and crucially, he was holding a gun.
Whoa, a gun. That just changes everything, doesn't it? That level of escalation.
It really does. It suggests, not just anger, but potential violence. She even mentioned this weird detail, like his pants were split at the seam. Kind of underscores the state he was allegedly in. He apparently demanded, "Why didn't you tell me about Cassie and Cudi?"
Okay.
And then, allegedly, told her, "Get dressed, we're going to go kill him." Meaning Kid Cudi.
Kill him.
Yeah.
That's a direct threat. Terrifying.
Absolutely. Clark testified she was terrified, said she'd never seen him with a weapon before. But she did what he said.
Understandable, I guess, in that situation.
Yeah. So she describes being forced into a black Cadillac, driven over to Kid Cudi's house in L.A.
This is it sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does. Clark said Combs and a security guy went inside Cudi's place, while she stayed in the car. And that's when she apparently grabbed a burner phone, a separate phone, and called Cassie.
Smart move. What does she say?
She frantically told Cassie, basically, he's got me with a gun and brought me to Cudi's house to kill him.
Wow. Could she hear Cudi?
Yes, she testified she heard Cudi in the background, totally shocked, asking, "He's in my house."
Unbelievable.
Then Combs apparently came back to the car,
Yeah.
took the phone, talked to Cassie himself, and then shortly after, they saw Cudi's car pull up.
So Cudi arrived home while they were there.
Seems like it. And then, Clark says, Combs and his bodyguard took off after Cudi's car. Actually pursued him.
A car chase. Seriously.
That's the testimony. They only stopped the chase, apparently, when they saw police cars heading towards Cudi's house.
Okay, so they backed off then.
Right. And after that, Clark alleged Combs told everyone involved they needed to convince Cudi it wasn't me.
Trying to cover it up afterwards. Okay, let's pause on this. The core insight here, it's not just anger, right? It looks like this alleged pattern of using violence, intimidation.
Exactly.
Like
Control.
Control, yeah. And then trying to manipulate the story after. How does this fit into the prosecution's bigger picture, legally speaking?
Well, it's potentially huge for their ICO case. Remember, RICO, the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, lets them tie together different alleged crimes into one big pattern, one criminal enterprise.
Right.
So this incident, if the jury believes it, it paints Combs as potentially volatile, willing to use force, threats, gunpoint threats, to maintain control and maybe silence people. And that alleged cover-up attempt afterwards, that could look like part of the enterprise trying to protect itself.
Got it. Okay, so that's the cutie incident. But Clark also testified about something else, another alleged instance of serious intimidation involving missing jewelry.
Yes, this apparently happened much earlier, just weeks after she started working for Combs.
Okay.
She was handling some very expensive diamond jewelry, necklace, bracelet, watch that was on loan from Jacob the jeweler, Jacob Arabo.
Right, famous jeweler.
Exactly. And when those pieces went missing, Combs allegedly pointed the finger straight at Clark, accused her of stealing them.
Okay, so how did he supposedly handle that accusation? Not just a conversation, I'm guessing.
No, definitely not. According to Clark, she was taken to this weird location, a mostly empty, kind of run-down office building in Midtown Manhattan, near Times Square, but it sounds like it was unfinished bad boy offices.
Sounds ominous already.
Yeah, and there, over 5 days.
5 days.
5 days. She was allegedly forced to take polygraph tests over and over again.
Lie detector tests for 5 days straight.
Yeah.
That sounds incredibly coercive. Intense.
Intense is one word for it. And the guy given the tests, she described him as huge, like 5 times larger than her own size. Chain smoking, drinking black coffee.
Just adding to the intimidation factor.
Totally. And Clark testified he made direct threats. Allegedly told her things like, if you fail this test, they're going to throw you in the East River.
Seriously?
And also, you need to calm down. You're going to be in the East River if I can't get a good reading. Just repeatedly invoking this image of being dumped in the river.
That is horrifying. Specific and menacing. To be subjected to that for 5 days, I can't even imagine.
It's deeply disturbing. And it paints this picture, doesn't it, of maybe an organization using these extreme, terrifying tactics to, get information, ensure compliance, even over alleged financial disputes.
So how does this incident fit the trial narrative? It's separate from the cootie thing, different context.
Right. It's not about jealousy or relationships. It's about alleged theft, money.
Yeah.
But for the prosecution, it reinforces the pattern.
Okay.
It suggests potentially that intimidation and coercion were standard operating procedure within this alleged Combs enterprise, regardless of the specific issue. Whether it was perceived disloyalty or missing diamonds, the alleged response involved extreme threats and duress. That reference to the East River, it implies this sort of brutal, off-the-books way of handling problems.
Yeah, that really stands out. It definitely supports that Ryko argument of a pattern of potentially illegal activity and intimidation.
Exactly. It helps build that broader picture the prosecution wants the jury to see.
Now, Clark's testimony also got very raw, very emotional when she talked about Cassie Ventura herself and alleged physical abuse.
Yes, that was reportedly a very difficult moment in court. Clark apparently broke down crying on the stand.
What did she describe seeing?
She described allegedly witnessing Combs kicking Cassie while Cassie was down on the ground, curled up in a fetal position.
Oh, God, that's awful.
Just a brutal image. And Clark testified that Combs threatened her directly when she might have intervened. Allegedly said, if I jumped in, he was going to fuck me up too.
So she saw this happening, wanted to help, but was allegedly threatened into staying back.
That's what she testified. It speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the kind of fear that might have been present.
Absolutely. That climate of fear again.
Clark said she was just heartbroken watching it. And since she felt she couldn't physically step in because of the threat,
right,
she said she immediately called Cassie's mother, Regina Ventura.
Okay, what did she tell her?
According to the testimony, she told Regina, he's beating the shit out of your daughter. I can't help her, but you can.
Wow. That's incredibly direct and desperate.
It really is. It highlights how serious she allegedly perceived the situation to be and her own feeling of helplessness.
Yeah, that message just hits hard. And this testimony, it directly accuses Combs of physical violence against Cassie.
It does. And that alleged threat against Clark herself, it reinforces that whole narrative the prosecution is building, that people, even those close to Combs, were maybe too scared to intervene or speak out.
Okay, so those were the big, explosive allegations. Were there other, maybe smaller details from her testimony that add to the picture? You mentioned that other allegations section felt a bit rushed before.
Yeah, there were a few other points that sort of round out the image being presented. For instance, Clark claimed that on her very first day working for Combs,
Day one,
he allegedly took her to Central Park late at night after 9 p.m. and essentially threatened her. Said something like, he'd have to kill her if her past work for other rappers' rivals ever became a problem.
So intimidation right from the very beginning.
That's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
Setting the tone, maybe. She also testified that she was the one who advised Cassie to get a burner phone.
Why?
because of Combs' alleged jealousy about Kid Cudi,
Yeah.
trying to help Kathy have some private communication, perhaps.
Okay.
There was also a comment that got struck from the record, but was reported, where Clark apparently said something like, the way Cassie was moving, she was going to get us all killed.
Struck from the record, so we have to be careful, but it suggests a lot of tension, danger.
Exactly. And finally, a financial angle.
Yeah.
She alleged that Combs just put up paperwork that showed she was owed like $80,000 in overtime.
80,000.
Yeah, because she was apparently working almost round the clock, nearly 20/47, on just a $65,000 annual salary. And he just ripped up the proof.
Wow. Okay, so adding alleged financial exploitation to the mix.
Right. So you see these recurring themes: alleged threats, control, paranoia, financial pressure. These other details kind of flesh out that picture of systemic control the prosecution seems to be painting.
It really does help connect the dots. Okay, let's zoom out again for the bigger legal context. Remind us, what are the exact charges Combs is facing?
Sure. It's a 5-count federal indictment. The main charges are racketeering conspiracy, that's the IKO charge we've been talking about, plus sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution.
And he's pleaded not guilty to all of them?
Correct. Not guilty across the board.
And this trial, it's not a quick one. How long is it expected to run?
No, it kicked off May 27th, and they're expecting it to last up to 8 weeks, so potentially running into early July.
And the stakes are obviously incredibly high for him. What's the potential sentence if he's convicted?
It's serious. The range is potentially 15 years up to life in prison.
Life. Wow. Okay, so that obviously has massive implications for him personally, professionally, everything.
Absolutely. His whole legacy, his empire, it's all on the line. And that IKO strategy the prosecution is using is really key.
Explain that again briefly. How does RICO allow them to bring in testimony like Clark's, even if it's not directly about, say, sex trafficking?
So IKO allows prosecutors to charge individuals for being part of a criminal enterprise. They don't just have to prove one specific crime, they have to show a pattern of related criminal activity conducted through that enterprise.
Okay.
In this case, they're alleging the Combs enterprise engaged in a pattern involving things like prostitution, forced labor, and potentially acts of violence or intimidation to maintain control. So testimony about alleged threats, assaults, coercion like Clark's can be used as evidence of that pattern, even if those specific acts aren't the main charges themselves.
Got it. It broadens the scope of what evidence is relevant.
Exactly. It connects seemingly separate incidents. Now, the defense is obviously fighting this hard. Combs' lawyer called it a bad act free-for-all, basically arguing the prosecution is just throwing everything at the wall.
Yeah, I can see why they'd object, but the judge is allowing it.
So far, yes. Judge Subramanian has consistently allowed this kind of testimony, ruling it's relevant to the RICO conspiracy charge.
And there's some legal history here. You mentioned the R. Kelly trial.
Right, that's an important precedent. RICO was used successfully in the R. Kelly case, which also involved sexual abuse allegations and the idea of an enterprise facilitating that abuse. So prosecutors have seen it work in similar contexts. Some legal analysts have even argued that Combs' business empire was allegedly riddled by illegal acts, which fits right into that RICO framework.
So if the prosecution is successful with the RICO charge here, it could be pretty significant for future cases, too.
Potentially, yeah. It could further solidify RICO as a tool to go after powerful figures accused of running operations that involve patterns of abuse or exploitation.
And who makes the final decision? The jury.
Yes, the jury. It's composed of 8 men and 4 women, and there are also 6 alternates, 4 women, 2 men. They're the ones who will weigh all this testimony.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive on Capricorn Clark's testimony, what are the really crucial takeaways for you? What should we be keeping in mind?
Well, I think the main thing is just how damaging these allegations are. We heard about an alleged gunpoint kidnapping, really violent threats, those coercive polygraph tests over days, and witnessing a physical assault. I mean, it's incredibly serious stuff.
Yeah.
And crucially, it all seems designed to directly support that R-Kessel strategy. It paints a picture, allegation by allegation, of a potential pattern of intimidation, violence, and control operating within Combs' circle, his alleged enterprise.
And all of this testimony, these serious claims, they definitely raise the stakes for Sean Combs in this trial immensely.
No question. If the jury finds Clark credible, and if they connect her stories to that larger pattern the prosecution is trying to prove, well, it could be incredibly impactful on the final verdict.
It really has been an insightful look into a key piece of this trial. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? Beyond just this case. It makes you consider the power dynamics, the potential for abuse in industries like entertainment, but really anywhere there are significant power imbalances. What does testimony like this suggest about the challenges, the vulnerabilities faced by people who work closely with powerful figures? It's definitely something to reflect on.
A sobering thought indeed.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for watching PNN, and remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video.